We're with the newest Hall of Famer, Dan Dierdorf. Congratulations. Saturday must have been a huge day for you. Tell me what happened when you were in Phoenix Saturday and found out.
Well, I was actually riding in a car on my way to the airport, to my hotel rather, and Jackie Smith had come and picked us up at the airport, and I knew the announcement was being made. They always make it at noon locally, and we were trying to get word in the car. Jackie had a phone with him, and he's dialing away and can't get through and not getting any satisfaction, and it's now moving towards 12:30 out in Phoenix, and I'm thinking to myself, well, nobody's called because nobody wants to be the bearer of bad tidings. And as it worked out, it was actually the dispatcher who called the driver on a two-way radio and said, "Is Mr. Dierdorf in the car?" And he said, "Yes." He said, "Well, tell him he's the newest Hall of Famer." So that's how I found out. So it was traumatic yet exciting.
It was a big surprise to you then, because we've heard you in interviews where you just said, listen, my peers know that I should be there, so that's all that matters to me. But was it a big surprise for you to find out?
Well, I'd really pretty much come to grips that I wasn't going to get in. I convinced myself of that. There's so few voters. There's only a panel of 36, and Jack Buck had fought his rear end off, and had been doing so for years, and was kind of like Don Quixote butting up against the windmill. Just wasn't getting anywhere. So close. I knew I was just one or two votes at the most away from getting in. And I don't know if someone saw the light. I know that there was a slight rearrangement of the voting panel. An old-time member had left, and somebody new came in, and maybe that was just the one vote that I needed.
What was the? Do you think the voting process should be changed with the only 36 voters? Because the Baseball Hall of Fame, it's kind of different. It's 900. Maybe that's too many. But do you think the football with the 36 should be changed?
It would be a little hypocritical of me to say, well, now that I'm in, I think it's just fine. Yes, I think it needs to be addressed by the NFL. I think it is too few people, and it's it's virtually all sports writers. And nothing against my friends in the written media, but why should they be the exclusive panel that votes for the Hall of Fame? I think if you asked a lot of the members of the Hall of Fame, they would tell you that if you took some writers, if you took some people maybe from television, although that's not necessary just because I do television. More importantly, I think you should have some older players on there, and I think you should have some coaches.
Hey, Don Shula, he'd be a great guy to have.
I think the coaches, more than anybody else, should be people that would have a real say-so in who goes in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Let's be serious about it. Who knows better about the qualities and the attributes of various players than the guys who coached them and coached against them?
Everybody knows you're a great player. You didn't play on a great team, though. The Cardinals had many years of futility, a couple good ones, but basically it was tough times for the Cardinals. You think that might be one of the reasons why you were overlooked?
I think that there's a real tendency to lean towards players that came from Super Bowl teams. Although I must tell you that it was kind of nice to see this year. Charlie Joyner, I don't think, played in a Super Bowl with that wonderful career of his. I didn't play in a Super Bowl. Mel Renfro did, certainly with the Cowboys, and Joe Gibbs, of course, won 3 of them. But it used to be that everybody that went in the Hall of Fame, there was like a span of about 10 years that like the only people who got in were just the automatics, like an O.J. Simpson and an Earl Campbell, somebody like that. Yes, I hope that this kind of breaks the dam a little bit. There are a lot of awfully good football players out there who didn't play on Super Bowl teams, and they should get their due.
How many people have you heard from now that maybe you haven't heard from in a long time? They're calling you now.
Well, and by God, they are calling me now. You can hear the phone ringing in the background. I have never talked on the phone so much in my life as I have the last couple of days. I have heard from old teammates, old friends, old coaches. Carmen Policy, the president of the 49ers, just called. It's very gratifying. It's very gratifying.
So you don't mind it at all?
It's a big deal. It's a big deal. I never really allowed myself to really think of what would it be like, but it's exciting. It seems to be gaining momentum every day that goes by.
Now, you found out Saturday. I asked this of Jackie Smith like the second day he found out. When do you plan on writing the speech? Do you have a timetable now, or do you have any idea what you'd like to say in that speech at all?
I think you just have a fear initially of forgetting somebody. So I think what I'll do is I think I'll start a speech file. And if I think of somebody, I'll just throw them in there.
Okay.
The public speaking part of it's no big deal. I'm not exactly afraid of a microphone. What I'm concerned about is that I have no idea how I'll be able to do it and keep my emotions in check. Just because I can't begin to tell you what it means to so many people that I grew up with back home. I'm just talking to an old high school friend of mine, and we were on the phone for an hour just talking about old friends and people he's heard from and that'll be there. You have to understand, I grew up literally in the shadow of that building, less than a mile away. My mother said it best, if you cut down the trees, I could see it from here.
Was that ever a dream of yours to get in? Did you, like, when you set out, did you say, I want to be a Hall of Fame player? Did you just want to be a good all-round player? Or did you set your sights? Because you said you live 2 steps away from the Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio. Was that a goal that you set as a child?
But no, it was not, because I couldn't possibly have been that foolish to think any dream so grand could possibly come true. You have to understand, this is... The Super Bowl that just finished was the end of the 76th season of the National Football League. And for 76 years, only the very best of the best have gotten in the Hall of Fame. I understand that the NFL is made up of just a very small group of people who played in college, which is a very small group of the people that played in high school. And you think that it all boils down, and this league has been here for 76 years, and there are less than 200 men in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Now, what child in their right mind, what young man in his right mind could possibly aspire to something like that? I have been in that building, and I have looked at those busts, and no, I never thought about it. I thought maybe I'd just be like everybody else. I'd buy a ticket and get in.
So did you go to the Super Bowl this year at all?
I went out there because I had some things to do. I did a dinner for Anheuser-Busch Saturday night, and I had something to do on Sunday, and I flew home while the game was going on.
What did you think of the game, with the highlights and all that?
Well, yeah, I have a VCR. I taped it, and I watched it on tape. Pittsburgh had a shot to win, and just didn't make the plays when they had to. And football is it'll never change. If you make a mistake, it ends up costing you. And then, they made a couple of mistakes. Neil O'Donnell floats the ball, and it gets picked off, and he has a receiver that doesn't read a blitz properly, and he throws an interception. It's a tough way to lose, because they played well, I thought.
So you don't blame the whole blame on Neil O'Donnell? There's other people involved?
Oh, the second one wasn't Neil O'Donnell's fault at all. That was a blitz adjustment. He threw the ball to a place, and it was obvious to me that his receiver broke to the inside, and he should have broken to the outside. And I thought Neil O'Donnell was pretty classy afterwards. He was taking the heat for the interception, as a quarterback always does, and he wouldn't name names. He said, this is a team game, and we're all in it together.
Now, Dallas has won 3 out of 4 now. Is this a dynasty, do you think, if they keep winning? 3 out of 4 is pretty good in the 90s with the talent that's out there now.
It is a dynasty. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it when you win 3 out of 4. And in reality, if you took away the first 5 or 6 minutes of the NFC Championship game last year when they fell behind 21-0, from then on, the other 55 minutes of that football game might have been the best football I've seen a team play in a long time. If you just take those 5 minutes away, the Cowboys would have won 4 Super Bowls in a row. And counting.
That's right. They keep winning.
And counting. They are one of the great football teams in NFL history.
And now the Rams, they had a pretty good season after coming off 4-12, 7-9. Just your assessment of the whole season.
They suffered. They suffered because they got off to the great start and then collapsed and ended up right about where we thought they would be. I remember at the beginning of the year, everyone saying, "Boy, if they got to 500, if they did an 8-8, that'd be a nice adjustment, a really nice progressive piece of work." And they got off to the great start, and then they fell apart. And everybody, the sky is falling, and started running around. The Rams need a couple of good years drafting. They can make some headway with free agency, but the Rams are still 2 years away, I think, from being a pretty good football team. And they got to start with a quarterback.
Right. Now, do you think Neil O'Donnell or free agent, one of those guys, who do you think they might look for this year?
Oh, I think Neil O'Donnell is a pretty good quarterback, and he is a guy that will make you instantly better. The thing I like about Neil is that he doesn't, as you hate to say this on the heels of the Super Bowl, but he normally doesn't throw a lot of interceptions. He's a pretty steady. He's not a risk taker. He's a pretty good QB. I would prefer to see the Rams draft somebody. If you really want to get it done, that's the way you get it done. You draft an Aikman, you draft a Bledsoe, you draft a Kerry Collins like they have in Carolina. I think if you want to really have good quarterbacking for the long haul, that's the way to go.
Now the Pro Bowl's coming up. ABC's got it. What do you think's going to happen there? And like what happened with all the receivers, do you think Isaac Bruce should have been there, or as you said earlier in the year, do you think, because he had a great year,
he did,
but you still don't believe he should have been there, or how's that?
No, the way the Pro Bowl works is that normally you don't. The rule of thumb was you don't make it until a year after you deserve it, and then you probably make it for one more year when you don't deserve it. It's kind of like the delayed reaction. Isaac Bruce had a phenomenal year. When the voting was going on, you have to understand that the people who went to the Pro Bowl in front of him were guys who have all gone to the Pro Bowl before, and when you look at their years, it's pretty tough to pick them apart. It's really tough to say that their years were really any worse than Isaac's. You might be down to a catch or two. But, Jerry Rice and Michael Irvin and Chris Carter and Herman Moore all had remarkable years. Now, of the four, I think the guy that Isaac probably had a legitimate shot at replacing was Chris Carter. Herman Moore and Michael Irvin and Jerry Rice, I'm sorry, those guys are going. And I think Chris Carter and Isaac were battling for that last place, and it's unfortunate. And I know how badly he must feel with that being his, that would have been his first one.
Oh, there's so many receivers, though. Brett Perriman, you should just go on and on. This year was a great year for the receivers.
Well, it's the league's finally getting what they wanted. They've liberalized the passing rules to the point where why anybody would want to play defensive back, I have no idea. It's astounding when you stop to think about it, how many receivers had three-digit years. Right. It's astounding. It really is. I'm not so sure maybe they haven't gone too far. Maybe it ought to be a little harder to catch the ball.
It's getting kind of easy.
Yeah, maybe it ought to be a little bit harder. A 10-reception game now is just another day at the office.
Prediction for the Pro Bowl. It doesn't matter, really. But
It's I have the AFC by 2. How do I know? All I know is the thing about the Pro Bowl is that guys get hurt and then guys win Super Bowls and they decide it's too far to go and all this and all that. And but it's last year we caught Barry Switzer eating a hot dog on the sidelines. Maybe we'll have another piece of excitement this year.
And he might run off with 1 second left, maybe.
Well, I think Barry's going to Disney World. He's not going to Honolulu.
Hey, Dan, thanks a lot for letting us come out, and congratulations, and hopefully we'll be up there with you in Canton. That'd be great.
All right, thanks.
Thanks a lot, Dan.
Yeah.
Nice guy, too. Completely nice.
Yeah, I think it's very nice to see Dan Dierdorf get in the Hall of Fame for some of the younger football fans.